This is just who I am. This is just what I do. This is just how I make money. It's always been that way without questioning why. Where did it come from? And do I still want it? Any moment we can change it all.
How do you practically start moving the needle for change when you feel like you're constrained by responsibilities?
Now, how do you do that?
Today's guest went from being in debt to a self-made millionaire. She reveals the most practical tips I've ever heard on manifesting, mindset, and money. Joining me on the podcast today is Regan Hillyer.
I was maxing out credit cards and personal loans and trying really hard, but nothing was working. I got to this point where I was over $100,000 in personal debt, 19 years old. And I sat down with one of my mentors and I said to him, I was like, this is not working. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And he said something that completely shifted my path. Either the time's controlling us or we're controlling the time, but it can't be both. And it's not about just working harder, because if the quantum field responded to effort, then everyone just working so hard every day would have everything they want. And it's just not true.
What kind of things did you have to change or learn?
Wishful thinking itself won't work. The affirmations won't work unless you change your...
You called in or manifested $1 million within 8 months. Can you walk us through that?
It's not because I did something special online. It's not because I learned some secret strategy. It's not because I worked 1 million hours a day. It was... So if you're listening to this episode, our prayer is that you're going to get some tools to actually tap into your highest essence so that you can shift and change and upgrade your life and your reality in a place where it's fun and it's easy and you get to be even more you in the process.
All right, balancers, welcome back to another episode of The Balance Theory. I'm so excited to learn from today's guest and really understand a bit more about her story behind maybe what we see online. My guest today is Regan Hillyer. Regan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erika. It's so good to be here.
Likewise. I'm glad we've connected at a moment you're in Dubai, because I know you spend a lot of your year around in Costa Rica and other parts of the world. So thank you so much for your time to chat with me today.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I think a really good starting context for listeners, a bit about you that I find really interesting, is you studied something that I think objectively has nothing to do with like what you're doing in life now. And I always love talking to people about these big pivots, because often we really box ourselves into like what we study or what we do for work is who we are. And so talk to me a bit about your pivot and why, from you studied architecture, you finished the degree, but now you're working at something completely different, spreading such a different message across the world. So walk me through that.
Totally. Yeah. You can't connect the dots looking forward, right? And sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, like how did I get from here to here? And such a journey. So yeah, when I was an architecture student, my dad always said to me, Regan, if I had your opportunities, I would have been an architect, because he got pulled out of school when he was 13 and sent to work in the family bakery. And he always had this dream of being an architect. And so when I was 17, 18, my parents were like, well, you have to go to university. What do you want to do? And I had no idea. So I was like, architecture, right? And so I was actually in architecture school and I had this moment that flipped everything for me, because a new lecturer walked into the lecture theatre in the morning and he said something like, welcome future architects, I'm going to guide you through a visualization process so you can connect with your future as the architect that you're born to be 20 years out from now. And I'd never done anything like this, right? Never. So I was really excited. So I closed my eyes and he started guiding us through the process. And for me, I saw the worst case scenario possible of my life. I saw myself sitting in this room at like midnight, working on the corner of a window, super unhappy. And I realized in that moment, like, okay, wow, I'm on this path and it's a path that I'm really good at, but it's everyone else's expectation of what I should do. And actually, do I even want this? And so this voice in my head was like, just get out, get up and get out. And I ran out of the room and I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out, why am I here? And how do I create a life that I actually love? So it didn't start with this like big mission, I want to impact millions of people. I was like, I want to be happy, basically, right? And so I went home and I went to Google and I was like, okay, how do you quit your 9-to-5 job? I wasn't even in one, but I was like, I need to get out of the system. And so I started coming across ebooks and different wealth creation events in the personal development industry. And so I started attending and reading books and going to these things and throwing myself in the deep end. And I started doing all the things that all the speakers told me to do. And they were like, you need to invest in property and learn Forex trading and all these different strategies. And so I was maxing out credit cards and personal loans to invest in all these strategies and trying really hard, but nothing was working. And I got to this point where I was over $100,000 in personal debt for coaching and education at like 19 years old. And I sat down with one of my mentors, Simon, and I said to him, I was like, this is not working. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just be an architect and have a job. And like, I don't see this vision board happening that I'm making, right? And he said something that completely shifted my path. He's like, Regan, whatever you want to create is 80% an internal game and then 20% what you actually do on the outside. And he's like, what are you doing every day on the 80%? And I realized I didn't even know what he meant, but that threw me into a whole new realm of hypnosis and NLP and self-programming and then energy work and then shamanism and continued on down that path. But the moment I combined that with the strategies I was learning, everything started changing really, really, really fast. And people were watching me. And so naturally, some of them started coming to me and they were like, okay, I can see you're happier, you're healthier, you're starting to make money. Like, what are you doing? And I started telling them and helping them for free. I was like, okay, well, in the morning, do this. And when you feel really scared, like, here's how you deal with it. And I started just sharing the stuff that was working for me. And the weirdest things started happening. They started coming back. Some of them were crying. And they were like, Regan, you don't understand. This stuff works. You've changed my life. This is different. And I felt this weird feeling in my stomach. I'm like, what's this feeling? And I'm like, I think this is what purpose feels like. And for the first time ever, I felt this sense of being really useful, helping other people. And I didn't know how to even tag it or name it, but I was like, I want to feel more of that. And so that's really how my life transitioned into helping people re-architect their lives instead of their homes, right? And it's been a wild journey.
I love that. That's like a spin on the place of architecture within your life and your purpose. Yeah. That's really cute. It's interesting how your starting point was you lent into a dream that was not yours. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think, we were just chatting before we started recording about having kids and that kind of thing one day. And the power of what other people tell you growing up is so influential. And I think it's really hard when we're 18 to make a decision. I had a very similar path where it was like, okay, well, what are you going to study at uni? Yeah. It was sort of like this expected trajectory. I didn't really have pressure from my family, like you have to go to uni. It was just more like seemed like the natural segue. It was like, oh, okay, what are you going to study next? Mm-hmm. And for me, I grew up being told because I was smart that I'd be a good lawyer. And so I internalized that and I was like, okay, I'll just pick law because if I get the marks, then that will be a good, safe career. My parents are very kind of risk averse. And, it's just made me think, based on your story as well, how influential those times can be. And people don't always catch that just before they finish their degree. They might be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years into a degree. Even I actually interviewed my dad a couple of weeks ago just as a memory for us to have. And I realized I never sat down to get to know him. And one of the things he shared with me, he's been an accountant his whole life. He actually shared with me that was a dream his dad had for him. Wow. And I never knew that. And he's like in his late 50s now and still doing that. He's now starting to pursue other things at that age. But, what would you say to someone who, if they really dig down internally and ask themselves, they're really not living, maybe they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, but they're doing something that just kind of ticks external boxes. Where do they even start to figure out what's next for them?
Yeah, totally. So I feel this is a muscle that can only be built through awareness. And it also gets easier and easier the stronger you build a connection to your own soul. Because you're right, we're living unconsciously off our programming. And that programming comes from our parents, society, past experiences, and it accumulates. And if we're not aware of it, then we just live into it. And then we're just like, oh, this is just who I am. This is just what I do. This is just how I make money. It's always been that way without questioning why. Where did it come from? When did I choose that? Is it the best? And do I still want it? Right? And also so many people are pouring concrete on their life. They're saying, well, I've done this for 20 or 30 years. And so that's just who I am and it'll just stay that way. And at any moment we can change it all. At any moment is a second opportunity to go, you know what, actually, maybe there's now an evolution. Maybe there's something better. Maybe I've been doing something I don't even want to do for decades and I get to change that, right? And so this comes back again to creating this core deep connection with your soul. And most people feel maybe that they don't have any connection with their soul. They're like, how do you do that? What does that even look like? And so it's practice with tuning into it. So I love starting my day every single day. Like when I'm lying in bed and I wake up and I'm like, oh, I realize like I'm awake, here I am. I connect and I'm like, okay, what does my soul desire right now? And you ask and you wait for that answer. And sometimes it might be like, you know what, just stay in bed another 10, 15 minutes, chill, right? Or it might be like your soul wants you to like get up and move and like go to the gym. Okay, do that, right? And you start learning to actually build this connection where you're listening to the intelligence of your soul. Because too many people are running on autopilot and they're like, okay, now I've got to go. I have my job. I've got to get up this time because I've done this always and I'll just keep doing it for the rest of my life. And their soul's screaming at them, being like, there's something more, there's something better, take a break, you're about to burn out, right? The soul can shout at us in so many ways, but we're not listening. And then as we do different things, maybe we try something new or we say yes or we say no, just always check in like, is this from my soul or is this from my programming? And just ask. And you'll notice sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you think it's so aligned and then you do it and you're like, actually, no, I didn't really want that. There's no failure in that. There's just learning. It's all just information. Okay, great. Now I know, not that. Let me try something else, right? Too many people get stuck in the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the failure, the success. It's information, okay? Yeah, you know what? I loved that. I don't even know how I would make money from that. Okay, let me just start doing more of it. And it will come. If it's so aligned, you're going to be supported through the process.
How does what you use every day shape how you feel? You know, we talk a lot on this show about the tools we use for our mindset, health, and well-being. But what about the things we just use for everyday life? Things that feel nominal, but actually make such a difference. Now, I don't know about you, but honestly, having socks that are soft, breathable, and cushioned, just like the Cozy Earth ones, have made the absolute difference to my walk, workout, day at work, sleep, or even just lounging around at home. I'm honestly in them most of the day. And if you are too, trust me when I say that intentionally updating such an everyday essential like your socks, especially to ones that have been built with intention, has completely elevated my everyday life. Cozy Earth has the option of calf, quarter, ankle, and no-show, so you can choose the ones that suit you best. For me, these ankle socks are probably my favorite ones I've ever tried. You can try them for yourself with a completely risk-free purchase, as Cozy Earth has easy returns. Head to cozyearth.com and use my code Erika, that's ERIKA, for up to 20% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure you mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. Experience the craft behind the comfort and make every day feel intentional. Thank you to Cozy Earth for sponsoring today's show. Now let's get back into the episode.
What would you say to people who feel they do feel that, right? Like they're on autopilot, but they maybe have limitations on their reality. And what I mean when I say that is they have practical financial restraints that mean they can't just, quit their job and just go and explore something else. Like, I mean, I know it doesn't have to be as dramatic as that, but sometimes we feel we have certain responsibilities, we have certain progress that we've made that would almost feel like we're really being too radical in our shifts, and people feel they're stuck within their own limitations of how to actually make that change. How do you practically start moving the needle for change when you feel like you're constrained by responsibilities and other things you've got on your plate?
Totally, yeah. And so many people get trapped in this because we often think that our external reality, our life is set and it's solid and it is what it is. And then unconsciously, we automatically react to it. So for example, our life is a certain way and we say, oh, I'd love to change it. Oh, but I can't because of my external circumstances. Now, it's actually the other way around, right? Your life, your reality, your external circumstances are like that because of what's going on internally. You're actually creating that constantly. So most people are here at the now, and then they're taking their past experience of what they know to be true, and then they're unconsciously copy-pasting that into the future, and then they're wondering why their life doesn't change. Instead of realizing they're at now, right now, the past is the past, and at any moment they can actually change their future. Now, there's ways to do that without obviously being super dramatic. Like this example, for example, if someone's, let's say in a job and they're getting a certain amount of money and they go, well, you know what? I asked my soul and my soul just wants to travel the world and explore and see what's next. But I can't do that. I don't have any savings. If I just quit my job, I'm going to be very irresponsible and I'm not going to have any money coming in. So in reality says like, no, that's hard. You can't do it. So what are other ways that you could get into the energy of making that happen? For example, keep your job in this moment. You go to work, you come home, and then for 30 minutes every day, you spend time on the internet researching different travel destinations. Where would you go? Okay, let me look at Thailand. Okay, what are the amazing beaches in Thailand? Actually, let me look at Egypt. Maybe I would want to go to the temples there. And you start actually getting into the frequency and the energy of having that experience without actually physically having it in the 3D. Because we're energetic beings having a vibrational and frequency conversation constantly. And so person one who goes, oh no, can't travel or listen to my soul right now, I'm just going to stay on my job, stays in the vibration of it's not possible, I'll never do it. The other person who's there, even on Google, every night for 30 minutes, is in a vibration and a frequency of let me explore this, let me feel the vibe of the travel. Okay, maybe not now, but in the future, this or that. And all of a sudden, that frequency starts to change the reality. And then magic starts happening. Then it's the scenario where their job turns around and says, actually, we're releasing you and we're giving you this huge payout and sorry, and it was unexpected. And they're like, I guess I'll go traveling, right? And magic starts happening, but it's because they were in that frequency. That would never happen to the first person because they're in the frequency of nothing else is possible.
Yeah, I've felt this magic in my life. It's so powerful. You almost can't explain it until you experience it.
Right.
But I think what is difficult, and I've experienced this myself, I see it a lot with others too, is emotionally moving there before you're there and before you can see it being possible. Yeah. Do you have anything really practical that helps us not just have sort of like wishful thinking and like feeling like we're chasing something that we're not really going to get, but we're just like hoping for the best? What's the difference between genuinely like changing your energy and doing that in a genuine way versus just saying and doing things because you're reading or hearing it? That's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. And you're right. Like wishful thinking itself won't work. You can't wishful think your way into changing your reality. It's also why like creating a vision board and then, just being like, oh, it didn't happen. It's also not going to work. The affirmations won't work unless you change your energy. And we shift our energy through our emotional state. Now, in order to call in what we desire in our life, if that's more money or an amazing relationship or the health or whatever it is, we must be vibrating and oscillating at a quantum physics level to match that energy. We must sync with it, okay? Now, how do you do that? You get into the feeling of it already being here now. Not that you want it in the future, not that you're hopeful that it's going to happen, not that you're excited for it. No, the feeling that it's here now. And now people might say, well, Regan, I don't know what it feels like because it hasn't happened, right? You've got to condition that feeling. And we are in the quantum field and we have access to all of the information simultaneously, relative to time, space, or distance. No matter how far away that dream reality is, we can access it. So what we want to do is actually cultivate this state, this vibration, this feeling. Now, people can do this through a tool that I call manifestation alarms. And this basically teaches people how to energetically condition themselves. So how you do this is you set an alarm, and ideally on the hour, every hour, right? Like multiple times throughout the day, as much as you can. Choose a good alarm that's nice for your nervous system, like not a it's like
not the morning alarm.
Exactly. Like a good, like nice alarm. Now, when it goes off, give me 20 seconds to 2 minutes maximum. Close your eyes and feel what it feels like to have what you want now. Now, the first couple of times you might not feel anything. It doesn't matter. Keep going. I promise you, if you keep going with it, at some point you're going to be like, oh, I feel excited, or I feel grateful, or I feel relief, or however it is, whatever the feeling is that's coming, amazing. The minute you feel it, command that feeling to get stronger. Like a dial, you're turning it up. Even tell it, okay, now double this feeling, triple it, let it run through my system. Allow yourself just to sit in it. You can be driving on the way to work, alarm, and you're still driving. You don't even need to close your eyes. feel what it feels like to have it now. Okay, it's here now. This is so good. You don't have to visualize. If you do, great. But what's important is the feeling and the vibration. So then what happens is eventually these alarms will then go off and you'll almost have this moment where your reality starts to blur. You know, when you have a dream and you wake up and you're like convinced the dream actually happened. You're like, it's real. It happened. You're like with your partner and you're like, you need to apologize for what you did in the dream. And they're like, what? It was so real to you. It felt so real, but it didn't happen, right? The same thing will happen with the alarms and you'll be like, I feel like it's here now. I feel like I'm living that life. I feel like I've made the money. I feel like the relationship's here. Oh, but it's not. This is a good thing, right? Because the reality is merging. The future reality is coming closer now. And that's great when you start having these blurs. And then eventually the alarm will go off and you'll look around and you'll be like, oh, it's here, right? I've actually manifested what I want. But this takes practice, right? It's like you don't go to the gym once and lift a weight and be like, where's my dream body? It's like, how many times did you work out? Once. It's like, well, you might need to do it again, right? And eventually the body will change. It's the same thing with the field. Again, we're just not taught this, right? And so the more and more we do this, the faster you'll get at doing it, the easier it'll become. And then you'll create the life you want, but then you keep going. You set more alarms. Okay, what's the next level? What's the expansion of this, right? And you're constantly in this evolution. And you just, it's like any skill, you get better at doing it.
Yeah, I love that we're having this conversation because often when it comes to manifesting or creating your dream life, it's not this one and done type exercise.
No.
It very much is a muscle that you have to constantly practice. And that even comes down to the way you speak and the words you use. Like as I've, explored and started to experience this in my own life, which by the way, I don't know if there's science or you have any thoughts behind this. When I was pregnant, I felt like I had double time manifesting power. Like I felt like I had two life forces.
Yeah.
And it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, I feel like I'm a manifesting supercharged right now.
Two fields working.
Yes. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That aside, you have to do the work on an ongoing basis. And I think sometimes when people are like, oh, but I've manifested it and it hasn't happened, like this is a very clear gap sometimes. Like if you really ask yourself, am I training this muscle? Am I trying to change my emotional frequency to get there?
Yeah.
Like that's often could be a gap. When someone has wounds, they've got traumas, they've got, maybe they've tried to do something over and over again. It just feels like they're in this pattern where it's not happening. Is there work that needs to be done first? And I'm not talking about like a big life traumas that maybe you need a therapist for. Like let's park that. Let's just talk about you've been in a couple relationships or you're trying to launch a business or hit that next level of wealth in your career or job or whatever it is. And you feel like you've had a few attempts at it that have kind of hurt your ego, right? So you're a little bit bruised. How do you like navigate that in the face of changing your emotional state? Because often it just feels like you're like lying to yourself or like trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah, totally. You've got to look at it. You've got to deal with it and you can't bypass this stuff. Okay, so remember when I said you've got to match energetically, vibrating there with what you want. Now, it's impossible to match that state if you're then vibrating in another state of fear or doubt or worry or feeling not enough or wounds or anything like this, right?
They're conflicting.
Exactly. So your system gets out of coherence. We're not synced up then, so we can't match it. So you can't just shove it under the table and be like, I'm fine, nothing happened. Like that also doesn't work, right? You've got to go in and look at it and simply ask yourself, okay, what's blocking me and stopping me right now? The reality is, if the thing that you want isn't here now, there are parts of you that are misaligned to it. Otherwise, it would be here. So we all have this. I'm constantly looking at, all right, what's blocking that next level? What am I afraid of? What am I telling myself a story around, right? And through the quantum field, there are particles that are in waves that are not actually collapsed into form until they're observed to be a certain way. So if we are observing that our manifestations or our life or what we want is going to be really hard or not for us, or we're observing that we don't believe it, or we're observing that we don't deserve it, we collapse all of our potential into that reality. And then that's what we experience.
Is this the cat in the box theory?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Our life is literally that, right? And people don't realize. So that's why they're walking around saying like affirmations, I love money, money loves me. And deep down, they don't feel deserving and worthy of receiving money. That is a vibration that's observing I'm not good enough for money. And then your life collapses and goes, oh, you commanded me to give you an experience of a life where you're not good enough for money. So here's the money or not, right? And so until we're aware of that and we bring it to the surface, that's when we can change it. Awareness is 95% of the game, right? It's not about then spending days, weeks, months, years. Oh my God, I have to clear all my blocks forever. What did you do on Sunday? I just cleared my blocks all day. You don't have to do that. What did you do on Sunday? Wow, I was able to catch that I had a lot of scarcity program going on, and I was telling myself there's not enough, and I was worried about it. And then I realized I don't want that to be my reality. And I realized I was creating that. So I chose to instead choose a different story. I chose to shift that vibe. I chose to realize, you know what? I don't want to live in that story anymore, because we don't get in life what we dream about, but we get what we're willing to tolerate. And so if we raise up this minimum standard and go, I'm not tolerating living in that vibe. No, you know what? I choose abundance. I am abundance. Look at the nature. Look around me. I see abundance everywhere. Okay, this is the vibe that I'm choosing to focus on. Then it starts to change, right? So we've got to look at simply what's blocking me, stopping me, slowing me down, holding me back, and then ask, how does it want to transform? Especially emotions, energy in motion. How do we want to move that energy into a powerful state that can actually serve us? And I don't mind what tool people use. They can journal, they can meditate, they can talk it out with a friend. They can simply see it and be like, I'm done with that. Right? Whatever the tool is, do something to shift it so that it's not hiding under the surface anymore. Because again, you can't match with it otherwise.
Yeah, and it's like an ongoing thing. It's not like a one-off. I'm deciding to change this, you know?
Exactly.
And I was just thinking as you were speaking, they're not so much, obviously they're blocks, but we could also look at them as unlocks, because as you level up, you're always going to be pushing the boundary on what you want, whether it's a financial ceiling or a place you live or the type of lifestyle you have, right? Like as you go through experiences, you then become aware of different things you might want. And so they become not so much, this is blocking me. It's just more, what things do I have to unlock to like get to the next level? And I think that's quite like an optimistic and practical way to look at it, because you're always going to have, like, just by virtue of something you're working towards and where you are now, there is a gap, and closing that gap is you unlocking things, right?
Exactly.
I know you had an experience where you called in or manifested $1 million within 8 months. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was 23 years old. I was living in Bali, and this is when I started out online. I left my current business in Australia and New Zealand. I built a seminar company there, and I was speaking like 5-6 times a week. And like I had a circuit from Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Auckland, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Auckland, just Brisbane as well, and on repeat, right? And I was burnt out and exhausted, and I just thought, like, you know what? I don't love my clients. I'm good at what I'm doing. And everyone's like, oh, wow, you're so young. You've created so much. This is so good. But I knew I was out of alignment. So I walked away from it. I shut it down. I went to Bali, and I was like, okay, who am I? I was telling you before the interview, I was like, I feel like I was born in Bali in this moment. And I sat down and I realized a couple of things. I realized in that company, I wasn't being truly authentic to Regan. I'd created that with so much fear. I was really young. You know, when I started, I was 20, and then by that time I was 22, and I was terrified people would find out my age, because I was like, they're not going to trust me, they're not going to buy from me. And I would try and make myself look like super professional. I'd wear these crazy suits. I'd put my hair in like a slick bun. I'd be like doing everything I can to try and look corporate and professional and intelligent, right? But it wasn't me. You know, I got to Bali and I'm hanging out in a bikini every day by the pool with no makeup on, and right? And I was just like, I want to be me. Like, how do I actually be more authentic? How do I be me? And the model I was operating in, I could only fit so many people in these rooms every day. So I was like, I want to help more people, right? There was a cap to it.
Also, your time in the week for how many talks you can
give and I was
capped.
Burning out. I built it, but I was going crazy. Definitely not sustainable. I mean, I was lucky I was only 22. If I was like 45, I would have had a big problem, I think, you know. So I was like, okay, how do I do this differently? And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to go online. I'm going to go online, number one, because there's a huge amount of impact that I can have there. It's not capped with people in the room. And secondly, I'm going to go online, but I'm going to make a rule that anything I post, I'm 100% authentic, right? And so I started Regan Hillyer International, which is my online company you see today, and I knew nothing about online business. I had 0 following, basically. And I scaled it from 0 to the first million in 8 months. And I did it by not looking left, not looking right. I did it purely from like, okay, what does my soul want to share? Who am I helping? Who are my soulmate clients? How can I show up? How can I serve them? And how can I make sure I'm really me? And every day I would pour my heart and soul into videos, posts, writing, content. Like I would just go for it. Nothing was pretty. Nothing was polished. Nothing was professionally done or edited. I felt sometimes like I was throwing things at the internet. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but I kept going and I kept asking people, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Right? And so it's interesting, like at that 8-month mark, when I crossed that $1 million mark and people started hearing about that, so many people were like, oh my God, wow, da, da. Like it's like they were creating such a fuss about it. And I was happy and grateful, but I was also like, yeah, of course. I was in this energy where it was almost obvious because I
weren't surprised by the success.
No, and this is important for people to hear. I wasn't like, oh my God, I did it. Oh my God, I'm so surprised. I was like, yeah, that's what I set out to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like when I started online, I was like, okay, 0 to $1 million in 12 months or less. It happened in 8, right? And so, yeah, happy and grateful and celebrating it, but it wasn't a big shock because I'd been living into that version of me from day one. The first thing I went online, and by the way, at the 8-month mark, this is important, I didn't have an Instagram page at that point in time. I hadn't set one up. I had just over 2,000 people on my personal Facebook, not even a business page. And I managed to get about 800 of them onto an email list. So that was my reach at the $1 million mark, which tells people this was not because she like blew up and went viral and like got millions of followers. No, it's because I built a very small community of people and I learned how to help them. And then I delivered on that and then I kept going whilst being truly authentic, right? So when I set out to do this, from every piece of content, from every day when I showed up, every moment I was like, okay, I am the $1 million online version of Regan, and I would walk and talk and think and act and be from that frequency. And when there were blips, right? Like sometimes I would launch a digital product and I'd be like, this is going to be so amazing. Then no one would buy it, right? I didn't allow that to destabilize me. I wasn't like, oh no, it's not going to work. Oh, now I'm stressed. I was like, okay, next thing. That's information. No one wanted that. I thought that was the shit. It was terrible. Like, okay, what do you actually want? Why didn't you guys like this, right? And I take the information and then I recalibrate. But I became very good at fine-tuning my inner state to embodying that version of me, and then my reality morphed around that. It's not because I did something special online. It's not because I learned some secret strategy. It's not because I worked 1 million hours a day. It was a frequency thing that worked. Yeah.
Those exact words that you shared, like, I'm not shocked by this, was something I said in the last 6 months when I achieved a certain opportunity in my professional work. I work as a lawyer, but I'm still consulting. And it's not that I wasn't grateful, but the truth is, like, if you're working towards something and you're constantly like putting it in your mind, it's not luck, right? And I'm a big believer there's no such thing as good luck, bad luck. I think you create your own luck. And I always am very intentional with the phrase, I never say the words, I'm very lucky. I say I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful, because the things that I have in my life, I do believe are a byproduct of the work that I've done internally.
Yeah.
Because the opposite has also been true. When I have felt like I've not been worthy of certain opportunities or certain amount of money or certain type of people in my life, that's been true. And the opposite is also true. And so I think, like, when you shift out of that mindset, or I guess it's kind of like a victim mentality, right? Of like, things just happen and I'm lucky if it happens and I'm not lucky if it doesn't happen. Things become attainable to you. What I want to ask you next, this is something I've thought about a lot. There's often a lag, right, between you setting out to become something or hit the next level. Like, the time does its thing. It doesn't magically arrive there the next day. Like, energetically you could shift there and be there, but your physical reality changing, sometimes there's a time delay, right?
Yeah.
How do you know the difference between being patient and waiting for that time delay, or whether that is an energetic block and it's not coming?
In terms of, is the outcome or is the time an energetic block?
So if you're like in a bit of a time period and like you're energetically doing the work, you're calling things in and you're waiting for that shift to happen, how do you know if you're meant to just be patient or whether the universe is actually just blocking something because it's not meant for you, or maybe you're not actually aligned?
Yeah. There will be signs. So generally, whatever someone's looking to create, it's generally not that they are where they are and then the thing happens. There's generally signs along the way and steps to it. Money is a good example. If someone's where they are, let's say they're doing 10K a month and they're like, okay, I'm now manifesting 100K a month. Well, they have to hit 50 in order to that to happen. And they've got to generate then 75K coming in. And so there's layers and signs. So you also want to be looking for the progress. You want to be looking for the progress, and that can be physical signs, or that can be also just like you noticing that you're internally feeling so much different around it. Sometimes, the time lag is because when you started, you were full of fear, for example. And then a week later, you're like, okay, the thing hasn't shown up, but I notice I'm not really scared around it anymore, or I'm not super attached to it, or I don't feel controlling around it, right? So you're also noticing the internal signs, and that's a good sign that, okay, things are changing and shifting, and we're on the right path. Too many people give up too soon as well. We never reset the goal if it's aligned. We always just reset the time. If you're like, okay, I want this to happen in a month or sooner, and then it doesn't, it's not necessarily like, okay, well, then I'm never going to do it. Reset it. Like, are you okay if it happened in 2 or 3 months? I think you'd be happier than it not happening, right? Yeah. So we want to play with it like that. You also want to look at your relationship to time, though, as well. This is important because time is one of the greatest tools in our creation toolkit, but it's a double-edged sword. It can be the thing that slows everything down and really limits us, or it can accelerate everything forward really quickly. And so, it's interesting because everyone has the same 24 hours in the day, and it's not about just working harder, because if the quantum field responded to effort, then everyone just working so hard every day, like killing themselves and not sleeping and living off coffee would have everything they want. And it's just not true, right? In fact, you look at a lot of people who are creating and manifesting at a very high standard across the board, and often they're doing a lot less. They're living a more leveraged life. Why? Why are they able to actually put in less time sometimes and generate more accelerated results? So the relationship to the time. So I really got to look at this because when I was more starting out, I would create things, but I would be like burnt out, like I talked about, and exhausted and feeling like I had no time for myself. And then I was like, okay, this is great. I can create all this money, but like at what cost? I want to also have a great quality of life. I want to be able to take time off, go get a massage, whatever. And I wasn't living that reality. So then I looked at it and I was like, well, okay, what do I believe to be true about time? And I started realizing that I was telling myself stories like, I don't have enough time. There's never enough time. I would hear myself saying like, there's so much I want to create. If only I had more hours in the day, right? I never have the time to like do what I love. I wish I had some more time for myself. I'd hear myself saying these things. And then I'm like, well, if I'm saying these things, there's a vibrational charge to that that's impacting my reality, and my life reflects that. I don't like that. I want to change it. We don't change the external by pushing more on it. We change it by rewiring this. I was like, okay, what if I just chose to believe that time is malleable and lucid, and it's an amazing tool that can actually help me create even faster? What if time was on my side? What if I always had time left over? What if I always somehow magically got everything done and I don't even know how, and then I always had spare time and extra time? This is my life right now, literally. Like so many people. I run 13 different companies all over the world, and everyone's like, this is insane. Like, how, right? And I have an amazing quality of life. And yes, sometimes there's travel and late nights and some intense moments, but overall, like I have amazing self-care. I go to the gym every day. I make sure I spend time with my loved ones. Like I have a really beautiful balance to that. And a lot of people would say that's impossible or just how, right? And it comes back down to this. I literally recalibrated my system and programmed it to have this experience. And I have sometimes these days where I literally don't know how it all happens. And literally I have the list of all the things and I'm like, somehow it got done. It doesn't even make sense to me sometimes, but time is molding and shifting and bending around me, right? And so when we recognize we are time benders and we can do this, we can play with it more and more and more. Now, we've all had an experience where we'll be sitting, for example, I don't know, in some waiting room and you're worried about something. Let's say it's a doctor and the person's like, 7 minutes till you see the doctor. And it's not 7 minutes, it's like 3 hours until they finally call your name, right? And we've had the other experience where you have like 7 minutes left with a really close friend and it goes like a minute, right? And you're like, it's a time blur. It's a time bend. It's because we're coming into an altered state of consciousness. And that again is driven by emotional state and our energetic state. The person in the doctor's waiting room, the time is like stretching out and taking so long because they're really worried, right? And they have fear, and they're like, oh God, what's the person going to say to me? This is so bad. And so it feels like it's taking forever. The time stretches out. If someone has fear with money, yeah, oh my God, but I'm worried. And is it going to really happen? What are you doing? You're stretching it out. You're putting it longer and longer away from you, right? Versus the person who's in the conversation with the friend and the time goes like that. And you're like, I thought we'd been here 20 minutes. It's been 3 hours. Oh my God. What have you done? You've taken 3 hours and you've experienced it in 20 minutes. That's why someone else can say, well, this amount of money should take a year, but yeah, we did it in 3 months, right? Because the emotional state is of joy, is of freedom, is you're getting into this altered state of living in your passion, your purpose. It's the same thing with the musician that plays music for 5 hours and can't believe it. He thought it was an hour, right? The same thing, right? So are we living our life from that frequency? Are we intentionally then bending the time? When we command the time to bend, it starts changing around us. I always say like this double-edged sword is like either the time's controlling us or we're controlling the time, but it can't be both at the same time.
That's really interesting to just think about. It's also popped the question in my mind of the concept of like deadlines, right? Like if you are practically working towards a certain amount of money or you want something by a certain amount of time, how do we deal with this sense of urgency? Well, we really want something, we want it now, we want it next week or within the year without contaminating the energy we're putting towards it. Like, because that can be quite like from a desperate place, right? But if it is something we genuinely want and we really want it fast or we want to experience that now, like how do you do that in a way that's not going to ruin the process?
Yeah, totally. So it's never the deadline, it's our connection to the deadline, right? I work really well with deadlines. Like you tell me, Regan, you have to be on stage and you have to send your slides by this date. I will be doing my slides an hour before I need to send them. It's just how I work. And I work really well with it and I know that, right? But, you know, I'm not stressed out when I'm making the slides. I'm actually excited. Okay, this is my time allocation. All right, I've got to get this done in an hour. Okay, amazing, like get it done, right? I'm not like, oh God, an hour, shit, I don't know if I can get it done. Right. So it's the same with anything that we're creating. We want the relationship to turn up. Let's say like, this is the year of like divine love and it's going to happen by the end of this year. One person can be like, okay, it has to happen by the end of this year. Oh my God, it's March. Why have I not met anyone? I haven't been on any dates. This is terrible. Oh my God. All right. And they're in this like, controlling fear, stress, contraction frequency with it, right? When we get into contraction, the new information can't come into our field. We're not in a state of openness and receiving. We contract and we block everything, right? So the deadline's the same in this context for the other person who goes, okay, on or before the end of the year, this is my year of divine love and I'm manifesting my partner. Amazing. Okay, it's March. I wonder who is coming around the corner. Oh, I haven't really been on any dates. It must be the moment for them to start coming in. Okay, what do you think? What could I do to accelerate this, right? It's the same deadline, but it's the connection to it. That person's open. They're in receiving. They're in expansion. They're going to notice possibilities and opportunities and people around them, whereas the other person who says they want it isn't going to see the same opportunities or date or person around them because their whole system's in contraction with a vibration of, oh my God, it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting and a way to positively channel a deadline, which I think works well for a lot of people, but often can be used to like almost block yourself. If you've taken something away from this conversation so far, something that challenged the way you've been thinking or put into words something that you've been feeling, then hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know somebody that will really resonate with this conversation too, make sure you share it with them. There's nothing like a conversation recommendation from a friend or somebody that knows you best. When it comes to money specifically, and with the people you've helped, what do you see as the most common block to allowing yourself to accept more money?
Yeah, so there can be a lot of different money blocks. I've helped many people now go from even complete startup through to $1 million and multiple $1 million through their purpose and their mission. And, you know, I'll spin it around the other way. The people that have done it, that make it in that context, that have become millionaires or multimillionaires in a very conscious, beautiful way, there's one thing that's in common about all of these people. There's no plan B. There's no other option. There's no fallback plan. There's no like, oh, well, you know, let me try. And then if it doesn't happen, you know, I'll go back to my job or, you know, I'll do something else or I don't know if it was for me. Like none of that exists in these people's reality. Maybe in the beginning, but then after they work on that and realize that they've got to be fully in coherence to match it, then they must become the person where they can't not manifest it. There is no other option. There is no fallback plan. There is no plan B. And this has been true for me in my life over and over again. It's the same thing when I went online. I wasn't like, okay, let me try and see and go online. If it doesn't work, I guess I'll go back to Australia and back to New Zealand and restart that. I was like, no, there is no back. I'm not going back. I was the same when I left architecture school. Like everyone was like, well, what are you going to do? My dad's like, okay, I understand you don't want to be an architect, but like, what's your plan? And I had no idea. I didn't have a plan. I just knew what I didn't want. So when I started exploring like, okay, how do I create a life that I love? I was like, I will never go back to university, to that system. I will never be an architect. I literally drew a line in the sand. So the people that get blocked by money, it's because they're available to other options. They're still unconsciously committed in some way to not manifesting the money that they want instead of going all in with it 100%. And then in that, yeah, there can then be fear and self-doubt and all these things weigh up, and people have different balances of them. But the big thing is that they haven't gone all in 100%. There is no other option. Just I will not tolerate anything less than that amount of money.
Now, for yourself personally, when you sort of, because you've shared you were in like $100,000 debt to like, making $1 million in 8 months and onwards and upwards from there, what kind of things did you have to change or learn as you started to have more money, to keep that money, to multiply that money? Like when you go from one level to the next, like can you actually talk to us about holding space for that much money and what you had to like relearn to then go onwards and upwards from there?
Yeah, totally. There's so much around this and I'm still learning, because there's still the next level of Regan, there's still the evolution, the next level of the finances. So I think the big piece around it is having a really clear vision and reason for it. I've never met anyone who's making a really large amount of money who was like, I don't know, I just did it because I was bored and like I just made money for the sake of making money. Everyone has a huge reason and vision as to why. Money needs a container for it to flow into. And that can be any reason. It can be just for you and your lifestyle, for a safety net. Originally, it can be to replace your income from your job. It can be to give back to your family, your community. It can be to travel. It can be anything. It can be because you want to go invest and build out a company. It doesn't matter. But you need to have a vision for that. If you don't, there's no trajectory in the quantum field. Money's energy, and the energy's like,
where am I going?
Where do I go? Why? I don't understand. And it gets so phasey, like fuzzy and hazy, phasey.
That's a good new term.
Yeah. Fuzzy, hazy, phasey. That it just like the energy is just like, I don't know. It's not clear. It's not a clear signal, right? So then after that, you've got to also be working a level out. Now, what I mean by this, I call this the vision beyond the vision. So it's not enough, for example, to say, okay, cool, I desire $1 million a year. Okay, great. Well, we have these upper limits in our energy field and in our unconscious mind and in our consciousness. And what happens is that generally when people get very close to actually manifesting what they want, all of their safety mechanisms kicks in and the fear and the doubt and everything, because your unconscious can't see what's beyond that goal if you actually create it in your life. Okay, so it's almost like you're standing on the edge of a cliff and your whole system goes, whoa, 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 step back from the cliff. You're going to fall. But it can't see that there's a little step underneath the cliff and then a road down. It can't see that. So you need to show your system, no, on the edge of this cliff's actually amazing because there's a safe step here and then a road here and then I get to this paradise, right? If you can't show your system, this is what's after it. It goes, no, you're going to fall off the cliff, and it does everything it can to make sure you don't get to the edge of the cliff. So that you
Which
don't.
Is sabotage.
Exactly. And it usually kicks in right before people are about to do it too. I see so many people like nearly at the cliff and then everything, and they're like, okay, it wasn't for me. And I'm like, no. You just didn't know step 2. You just didn't show your system that it's not a big, dark, black hole after the certain amount of money. It's actually amazing. So all of a sudden, the $1 million doesn't feel so big because your system can see, after that, there's $1.5 million, there's $2 million, there's $10 million. And look how good your life gets to be at that level, right? So you always need to be working like 1 or 2 or 3 levels out so your whole system can calibrate to that.
So when you personally set a goal, let's just say, let's keep the financial theme running.
Yeah.
Say it's $1 million a year for argument's sake. Do you then also set year 2, year 3, year 4? Like how do you practically weave that into planning or like manifesting?
Yeah, you can do it with time or even without time. You know, you can do it on years, or you can literally like, okay, $1 million a year. And then after that, I'm manifesting 1.5. And then I'm manifesting 3, right? Okay, why? Why do I need $3 million a year? I mean, if you're going to tell me it's for your personal lifestyle, I don't believe you. You have to work very hard to blow $3 million a year just on your personal lifestyle, right? Okay, you want to buy a family home. Got it. You want to do this. You want to do that. You want to take a trip here. You want to contribute to that charity, whatever it is, right? So you need the containers for that, and you need the layers for that, right? And so, yeah, you can play with the time, or you can just simply show your system, hey, like this is what's actually coming next. And then after you do that, that's when you do need to look, like we talked about the blocks, the limits, these pieces that are not vibrating there, that are scared, that are doubting, that have all of this. And I liked what you said earlier as well about the unlocks. I think of it often like a video game, and you're in the game and you hit a wall, and on the other side of the wall is the goal, in this case, the money that you want. And you're not going to get through just by bashing yourself against the brick wall until you realize like, there's a key on the ground here. This key is not allowing the fear to have a hold over me anymore. And the door unlocks and you walk through and you're on the other end. So we're constantly playing this video game in life of these new levels, these unlocks. Here's what there is to learn. Got it. And we can't go through to the next layers without unlocking these pieces. And also we can't get through to the next layers without actually becoming the version of ourselves that's got to step into that next level.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the 4th step of actually embodying what I call your highest self, or the version of you that's actually already created what you desire. So we get to choose the version of ourselves that we bring to the altar of life each and every single day. We get to choose. Are we living into our highest self, our normal self, our lower self? Like, where are we at? And I think we all know that we have this choice. You know, those days where you get out of bed, you stub your toe, you're in a bad vibe, you have an argument with your partner, and then you're driving to work, and then someone nearly crashes into you, and you're just like, this is the worst day of my life, right? At the end of the day, you're like, what a shit day, right? Was the day shit, or were you shit at changing the state, right? The same person could have stubbed their toe, had an argument, and then be like, okay, I'm going to switch my vibe. I don't want to be in this energy for the rest of the day. I'm sorry, babe. I love you. Change it. Move the energy. And all of a sudden, the rest of the day is fine, right? So are we taking control over that? Or are we just defaulting into our lower self, which is very easy to do? So if there's something that you desire and you want it, and you have like this feeling like, yeah, I want to create that much money, or I want to live a life like that, or I want to be in a relationship like that, then there's a version of you out there in the future that's actually already living that, and you wouldn't want it otherwise. You know, if my friend came to me right now, oh my God, Regan, I just bought this red Ferrari. I can be so happy for them, but I don't really want a red Ferrari right now, right? It doesn't really make sense with my lifestyle. I live in the jungle in Costa Rica. Like, it wouldn't work, right? Now, if maybe I lived in Dubai and I was obsessed with red Ferraris, right? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. I really want a red Ferrari too. That's because there's a version of me out there somewhere in the future that has a red Ferrari, right? And both are great. It's just, do you want it or not? And if you want it, it's because you've already done it. So through the quantum field, we know we can access all the information simultaneously, relative to how far away it is. So we can go and connect with that version of ourselves and actually import all of this information into the now, because we don't get in life what we do, like we talked about. It's not about effort and doing more. We get the external reality reflecting who we choose to be. So this is not about faking it till you make it. It's not about becoming something you're not. It's actually about being authentic. It's about getting into radical authenticity with the truth of who you actually are. Isn't it interesting that the 0 to 1 million in 8 months online? Why? Well, I just want to be me. I just want to be authentic. I want to be the best version of me. And then from there, how can I help? From there, what do I do? Okay, internet, I don't understand. Click funnels, this, that, opt-in. Okay, let me learn, right? But from this energy of embodying my highest essence, right? So when I walk out on stage, I'm never walking out as Regan. I always intentionally throw my consciousness into the highest version of me that is here to serve the people in front of me. And I ask that that version of me speaks through me. And I ask that I embody that version of me. And I ask myself, okay, how does that version of me walk and talk and think and act and be, right? It's the beingness. And so through quantum entanglement in the quantum field, we know that there can be two particles, relative to how far away they are, they can impact each other. And beyond influencing and impacting each other, they can actually entangle and fuse and merge and become one with each other, no matter how far away they are. Now, we're made up of particles. Our highest version of ourselves and the life we've created is also matter. It's made up of particles. So why not command at a particle level that version of you in your future can update this version of you right now and merge and fuse and become one with it, right? So when you walk into a room, are you just unconsciously walking into a room, or are you walking in as your highest self? When someone says, hey, oh my God, there's an amazing opportunity. You should fly to Bali next week and come and join us. Logistically, your mind is like, oh, I don't know, can I, And your highest self is like, go. This is important. But why? I don't know. Just go to Bali, make it happen, right? And you listen and you act from this place. It might not always make sense. It might not always be logical. It might not always be easy. It might not always be convenient, but are you saying yes from that place? Or are you just defaulting into your old programming? So this is the fourth piece, right, of really embodying this version of you. The version of you in this example, that is the $1 million version of you, the version of you that's created the money that they want. What do they say yes to? What do they say no to? What do they no longer tolerate? How do they walk around a supermarket? What food choices do they make in that supermarket? It's in the micro details. It's not about blowing up your whole life. It's like, okay, like, do they eat this or do they eat that? How much water do they drink? Do they move their body? What do they do in the morning? What do they do at night? How do they see a stranger and smile and open the door for them? It's the tiny little things. It's not like, oh my God, now I need to do everything different. It's the micro details that change the frequency and the embodiment.
Yeah.
And then the last piece is you take action from that place. Anything you then do around money, your business, accelerating your job, getting that promotion, whatever it is, it's done from this frequency. It's done from this embodiment.
I love this idea because it's almost like you can borrow from your future self, like the advice, the wisdom, the energy. It's like you always have that within you. And so what I would love to know from you, now that you can, look at all the dots connected, you're in the future now, but if you look back, what do you think Regan in $100,000 debt took and borrowed from you now, let's say, or even future self from today?
Yeah, it's trippy to think about, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. I mean, a lot. I remember a moment where I was probably about 60K into the debt at this time, right? And I went to this event. I was actually in Queenstown. We were just talking about Queenstown, New Zealand, how beautiful it is. It was in Queenstown. And I'd borrowed money again to fly myself to this event, to get to this event. I was like 19 years old. And I was sitting at the back of the room. I knew no one. I was watching all these super inspiring speakers in the stage for like 6-7 days. And I ended up making friends with one of the speakers, and honestly, I think he felt sorry for me, like just because I was by myself. I was super young. He was like, there's a child at the back of the room, basically. Like, they were being super nice to me. They invited me to the speaker's dinner, right? He's like, would you like to come? We have our speaker's dinner, our party, our celebration on the Sunday night. And I was like, okay. And so I went to this amazing villa up in the mountains in Queenstown. And I remember standing outside the door, and I opened the door and opened it, and it's like, everyone, like 50 people from the stage turned around and looked at me like all at the same time, and I wanted to die. Like, I literally wanted to die. It was this moment where like my whole system was like, okay, I want to leave. Like, I felt like I didn't belong there. I was literally so inspired and so impressed by these people, and not just the success that they created, but they were all just so loving and kind and beautiful. And I was just like, I feel like I don't fit in here. I'm not one of them, right? And so I had a moment where I was like, do I run? I was like, okay, I'm going to go inside. And I was like, okay, Regan, you have one task. Just pretend you're like a podcast host, an interview host, and ask them questions all night and find out how they did it, right? I set myself an assignment. And so I did that. I talked to all of them all night. And I was like, I heard your keynote. It was amazing. But like, now we're here. Like, tell me how you actually did it. Like, what was the secret? Like, what did you actually do? And I gathered all this information all night. And I went home totally confused, right? Because I realized like all of them had created a huge level of success in totally different ways. Nothing was the same. And so I was lying there in bed and I was like, okay, what is it about these people that's actually the same? And then I realized, they all kind of feel the same to be around. They feel amazing to be around. And I noticed that they had a certain energy to them that was, so confident, and like they just felt like they knew who they were. And I noticed also their body language, like their shoulders were back, their eyes were up, they were smiling. I was like, how did I walk into that room? And I was like, my shoulders were hunched down. I was looking at the ground. I wanted to die in a hole in the middle. And then I realized, I was like, okay, I was being very different to them. And that's a choice, right? And I started having this thought. I was like, I wonder how the $1 million version of Regan would have walked into that room. If I'd actually created $1 million, I was 19 years old, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, if I had, I wouldn't be someone else. I'd be another version of me. So I'd be authentic. I would have dressed differently, firstly. I'm not saying I would have been in designer clothes, but I would have just had a different vibe. It would have been different clothes, My body language would have been totally different. My shoulders would have been back. I would have felt confident and said hi and looked them all in the eyes, and I would have shook their hands when they shook their hands differently to how I did. And I noticed all these details. And I started playing this game with myself. I called it the $1 million version of Regan, and I was like, I'm just going to walk around like this. Right? I'm not going to make crazy financial decisions that put me in more debt because I'm already in that rabbit hole, but I am going to, wherever I can, make choices from this place. When I drive the car, I'm going to drive it as if I was that version of me. And I'm driving like a super beat up Toyota that was like $800, right? and I'm like,
about the energy.
Exactly. And I'm driving it and I'm imagining what the steering wheel would feel like if it was like my dream car in that moment, right? And I'm in this place and I'm saying hello to people from a certain vibe and energy. Again, not trying to be fake, but trying to be more me. I was accessing literally this version of myself, a version of myself a few years on, right? And connecting in that way. So what did she borrow? I mean, I think she borrowed everything. I literally changed how I walk, talk, think, act, be. I started dressing differently. I would say yes to going to things and no to going to things that in the past, had there been a family event, oh, okay, I have to go to the family event. And I sat there and I was like, would the $1 million version of me go to this event? You know what? I went to the family event last week. The vibe wasn't great. And actually, no, the $1 million version of Regan would be like, hey, love you guys, but I have some things to work on. And she'd work on something more beneficial for her life, right? And I'd make little choices like this consciously, but from that place. Mm-hmm. So I think she borrowed everything.
I love that. It's great to hear, because often we think we have to be this version of ourselves that we're not, but everything that you've shared that's bringing it back for me is like it's just sinking into a more authentic version of ourselves.
Exactly.
A closing question from me. What are you borrowing from your future self to help you now move towards the next version of Regan?
Everything. Once again, everything. I'm constantly tapping into her. And it's in the moments where I'm like, oh, okay, should I left, right, yes, no, does this make... I stop and I'm like, okay, that version of me, like right now I connect with the $1 billion version of Regan, right? And I'm like, okay, that $1 billion version, she's anchoring in $1 billion a year. She's helped that many people that her wealth reflects that, yes or no. And then it becomes very clear. This is a no. This is a yes, right? And so again, it's everything. It's as much of all of that information of how much more me can I be that I'm tapping into. And even like with this version of me right here today, like, I mean, I feel amazing in my life. I feel so happy and so grateful. But the core of it, I feel more me than ever before.
That's beautiful.
I feel more me. If I take myself back to even like the Bali version of me, I was me, but like now I'm just so much more me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'm very grateful that this version of you, future version of you, this was something that you could say yes to that fits in with your work and your mission. I'm really grateful to have learned from you today and for you to have taken the time to also share with our community. I'm very inspired by all the work you do. You're literally speaking to my soul, the way you talk about these things, especially when it comes to money. And I think money often is seen as this materialistic thing, but it's just a tool to, it's an energetic tool, right? To help you have more impact, to create a life that's more aligned for you, to be more of yourself. So I'm very inspired by all the work you do. No doubt every single person listening has learnt a lot and been moved by this conversation. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you sitting with me today.
Thank you, Erika. You're amazing. I've loved this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.